Detroit Koolaid, we're back in the building. This is Oakrey. I'm here again with my buddy Grifka. Grifka, what's going on, man?
Hey, man, just happy that the draft is over, and I know I'm a big baseball fan, but I'm looking forward to Lions season again. I'm really interested in seeing what this team can do with the new picks and the new coach.
Grifka, we have officially banned all baseball talk from this podcast, but we are here to talk about the Detroit Lions draft that just concluded this past weekend. We're going to hit rounds 1 through 7, all the different draft picks, and talk about it in general. So I haven't spoken to you since. Give me your thoughts on the number 1 pick at number 20, Frank Ragnow. What are you thinking?
Well, I've said it before. I'm just generally not one to take interior linemen in the first round. You can always find decent ones someplace later in the draft. I always thought this team needed more defense, either defensive tackle help or an edge rusher. So to be honest with you, I was a little disappointed that was picked. You know, I've heard, he was didn't allow a sack, but, he was injured half the year, his senior year. Oh, we learned under Travis Swanson. Well, that's great. Travis Swanson really showed himself pretty well in Detroit. If he was that good, he'd still be here. Maybe Ragnow will turn into, one of the greats. I feel the Lions haven't had a good center since Kevin Glover. But if he turns into something, makes a Pro Bowl here and there, is a solid player, fine, I'll live with it. But I just always find it difficult taking an interior lineman, in the first round of draft.
So, Grifka, let me ask you, who would you have taken at number 20? I know you're watching. I know you pretty much know who was on the board at the time. If you're turning the card, who would it have been?
I know he slid, but Harold Landry still. I don't know everybody's reasoning why all the teams decide to let him slide, but still, I think him coming off the edge with Ziggy on the other side, at least this year. He could replace him next year if the team decides not to re-sign Ziggy, but still, I still think they need an edge rusher. Basically, we're depending a lot on Kerry Hyder to come back. And I realize Anthony Zettel, had 6.5 sacks last year. But to me, Anthony Zettel's kind of he's another guy. That's the way I kind of look at him. The other team's offenses are not game planning for Anthony Zettel. He's there. So it's okay, we'll throw, chip him, and let him go. But I don't fear that other edge. So the Lions could have put 2 good edge rushers together like that. I would have been really, really pleased. But once again, maybe they're running, more 3-4 this year, and than the 4-3 that what we're used to seeing. So maybe that's their plan. But once again, I would have went with Harold Landry.
Yeah, sounds good. My pick would have been Landry as well. The problem is we don't know the medicals. We don't know some of these character things that pop up in the draft. And my other thing is I don't see Landry as being that other edge guy opposite of Ziggy. I saw him more as a blitzing backer, move him around, we don't know what Kennard's going to be yet, but I think that's sort of, Kennard is 256 pounds, 6'4" at linebacker, so, he's a big guy, but I think they'll move him and make him rush at times, so I guess, when I thought about it more, I just thought, maybe Landry didn't fit, kind of, as you sort of said, what they want at both size and as much of a need, because he's not just going to put his hand in the dirt every play. Harold Landry won't because of his size, but to me, he was the best guy on the board, my Lions targets at the time, and that's where I thought they would go to. But I just want to reiterate a quick take on Ragnow. Grifka, for years and years, man, we've been talking about the trenches. We've been talking about, it'd be nice to have a dominant O-line, wouldn't it? And we talk about it, and then we go draft a receiver, and then we say it again next year, and then we go get a tight end, and then we talk about it the other year, and then we go get, a fringe defensive player. Finally, they've put tons of resources in the front, and now you don't like it. I can't not like it, and no matter, unless the guy's a total bust, I think it's a good way to build your team. Just look at Dallas the past few years when they really invested, and look at the reward they got. I think that's the best case scenario what we got to look for. So I'm a fan of the pick, man. Talking trenches and actually doing it.
Hey, reasonable minds can differ. So I can see your point with your take, but you can always find those those interior linemen in later rounds of the draft. And I'm still a firm believer that when it comes down to it, that interior linemen like that, when a play needs to be made, they're not going to be the one making it. First rounders to me are those game breakers, the guys that, if you need something, these are the guys that you're looking for. These are the guys that you're looking for to come with the play. The big stuff of the run on a 4th and goal. Guy coming off the bench on a 3rd and 5 to, either break a pass or get a sack, or, an outside linebacker, making a play, cornerbacks, a running back busting off a long one, wide receivers making a tough catch. Of course, the quarterback making the, feeding the ball in there. Centers and guards. I know that I'm making it sound like I need trendy picks, like flashy guys, but those first rounders to me are the guys that make the plays. And that's the way I've always kind of looked at it.
Yeah, and it's understandable, but there's 2 points I want to fight you on for a second. First of all, we talked about it in a previous episode. The O-line is one of the few positions that's out there every snap for the whole game. They impact 2 areas of the game, the run game and the pass game. So that, to me, they got extra value. 1, because they play every snap, every game when healthy, and they don't get injured as much. And 2, they impact multiple areas of the game where, and even as good as an edge rusher is, he's not only not going to play all the time, he's not going to get to the quarterback every play. What's a good sack year? 12, 15 is a really great sack year. So those are 2 arguments. And my other thing is, I've been looking into the contracts a lot the last few years. If you look at the way the NFL draft is structured now, everyone says, you can't take a guard or a center that high. You got to take quarterbacks high. When you really look at it, it almost doesn't matter anymore, in my opinion, because you're paying Frank Ragnow 4 years, I think a total of maybe $18 million guaranteed for that whole contract. So as long as he helps your team, he comes in and plays, that's a very low-level free agent contract regardless. So, the only benefit of taking these quarterbacks high is that they turn out to be a complete stud, then they're just on the cheap for 4 years. But what's the difference if you take an O-lineman there or you take an O-lineman in the 3rd round? It's a difference of, $5-10 million bucks. That's a drop in the bucket in the NFL. So I think you just go get – the NFL draft is so cheap across the board, you don't have to have that position value anymore like you used to.
Yeah, I see your point, but I still believe those first-round guys are the guys that you draft that they need to make the plays. So that's, like I said, reasonable minds can differ on this.
But O-linemen aren't making any plays, in your opinion? They're not opening holes. They're not protecting a $27 million quarterback? I don't get where they're not making plays.
There's plenty of guys that are O-linemen that are taken in, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th rounds that are doing the same thing. And if you're missing out on that guy who can make that play, so you're like, well, we need to beef up our line, so you go and you take a need pick, that's what happens.
What if you go take all these positions and you ignore the line? You end up with Dominic Raviola in the middle, and you end up with a bunch of other bums that can't block anyone. That's what we've had the past decade. I'm tired of it. Why do you think we can't run on 4th and short? Because we have no O-line. Why do you think our quarterback's getting killed every other play? We have no O-line.
Well, you're right, but that being said, you're protecting Matt Stafford, and you just took a rookie center to do it. Your rookie center is supposed to be making all the calls. TJ Lang is not going to be telling the line where to block, where to set up. It's going to be the rookie that you're now depending on.
But you got to look at you got to look at Bob Quinn though. The way he set it up, I'm looking at the chart, the depth chart right now. He's just going to let it play out in training camp. You can if he's not. I don't think calls are a huge issue, and I think number 9 is making a lot of the line calls anyway. But you can put Ragnow in the middle. You can put him at left guard. Frank Ragnow said he can play tackle and says he can play all the line positions, so there's a bonus. We know Glasgow can play at least 2, if not 3 positions. There's all this flexibility, so you're not nailed down to, if Frank Ragnow doesn't play the middle and make every call and is perfect, he's unusable. that's why I like it again so much, because he's so, the versatility and the way you can just move him around. Let's say TJ Lang blows out his knee and early in the year, you can slide him over to right guard, reshuffle your interior guys there and make it work. So I don't know. I mean, we still got Joe Dahl, and we'll talk about the other lineman we took here in a bit, but I think they got so much flexibility and so much interchangeable parts up there that even if we have some injuries, we're not going to have to worry about it like we have in years past. So you got to look at that. It's not just like, oh, this guy's a center and that's it. Like, that's not how Bob Quinn drafts. Like, you got to be able to do multiple things and, making line calls, like you said about playing tight end or some of these positions that act like it's brain surgery. I mean, it's not. This guy's been doing it for 4 years at a pretty high level, so I wouldn't worry about it. But anyway, okay. You don't want to get me ranting any further. So as you said, I guess we'll agree to disagree, but I think you're going to love this pick here in the next couple of years when we have these 5 just big nasties up front that are doing some big things. So on to the rest of the draft. I'll let you pick the next pick that you want to talk about. Who else caught your eye or you want to discuss?
I guess we'll go with Kerryon Johnson right in the second round there. Am I happy they took him back? Yes. Kerryon Johnson, once again, he played at a high level down at Auburn, played in tough conferences that plays tough defense. And, he did some stuff down there. I know everybody was talking about, Geis out of LSU. Once again, I mean, everybody was like worried about his character, things of that nature. But, Johnson, am I happy with the pick? Yes. Yeah, I'm happy with that pick. Do I think he'll start? I think the Lions are going to, depend a little more on Blunt this year, and maybe, I don't want to say develop Johnson, but I mean, I think they'll go with Blunt a little more, and then, next year they won't re-sign Blunt. Then they'll depend on Johnson more to be the workhorse. So, do I like the pick? Yeah, I mean, I like that pick an awful lot. So I was pretty happy that that's what I got.
Talk to me about his role, or your best case scenario for him, both stat wise or usage wise in year one, and what do you think about the trade up to get him?
Trade ups to me, I always find them, unless it's somebody that you're really, really in love with. I'm not a huge fan of giving up, picks, to move up, just a few spots. I mean, what they gave up for him. Okay, if they felt comfortable and felt like with, they were getting good value for it. Okay, I can live with that. But I'm not a huge fan of giving up draft picks for it. I mean, if you're giving up a 7th or something like that, okay, I can live with that. Mid-round draft picks, I'm not a huge fan of giving up those to move up in a draft. You can still find really good players at that in those rounds. So what they gave up to get him, I mean, I can live with it. But I'm just happy they got a running back that the guy's got some decent moves. I mean, it doesn't look like they showed a lot of his highlights. I mean, I saw some of his games. He wasn't one of those guys that was always looking to break it to the outside. He could go up between the tackles, jump cut to the outside, to get to the clear space. But he wasn't instantaneously, just when he got the handoff breaking for the tackle, trying to get to the outside. So I'm pretty happy with that pick. I really hope that translates, into the pros. That's what he wants to do because, once again, I've said to you before, everybody in the pros is fast. You just can't run to the edge. I mean, we had that with, Kevin Jones. I mean, from Virginia Tech, that guy just always wanted to break it to the edge, and he would get tackled, and because he was just always looking to run outside. But this guy, he can take it up the middle, and once he gets into the second level, that's what he's looking to. Like every good running back, break it to the outside at that point, to get around the safeties. So I like to pick an awful lot, and I envision him. He'll probably maybe get, depending on what the offense looks like, depending on how the defense holds up. If we're not pass happy, I could see him maybe getting, like I said, splitting time, early in the year, maybe getting like around 10 to 15 carries. And as the season goes on, depending on, what the game plan is, him becoming more of the workhorse, getting somewhere between, 15 to, 20 carries a game.
Okay. So basically you're saying it's a great pick because they got great interior offensive line, which helps in multiple areas of the game. And Bob Quinn, thank goodness, has invested up there to make this running back pick worth it.
We passed the first round already. We're going to move on. We can have a Frank Ragnow day some other time, but let's move on here.
No, I was just saying, like, Carry-On wouldn't be as good without some beast up front. Don't you agree?
Well, if that whole right side of the line could stay healthy this year, it would be pretty decent. If Taylor Decker continues to develop, I realized he was hurt half the year, and everybody expected him to come in and just be great, from his injury with no preseason games or missing half the season. Everybody expected him to come in and be the Great Wall of China. But if he develops, right there, Glasgow. I think Glasgow obviously has done pretty well. So, okay, they got their center. Let's see how good the center is.
The best O-line we've had on paper maybe in our lifetime, and you were just finding reasons why you don't like it. Anyway, back to Carry-On. What do you both see him in the pass game, and then also you said something about you think, which most people just kind of assume, Garrett Blount's here 1 year and he's gone. So in 2019, you just envision Carry-On to be the guy, and give me a quick 2 seconds on the rest of that depth chart, both. Once training camp's over, who do you see as that running back depth chart, and then what about next year?
Well, I think the starter right now is going to be penciled in, is LeGarrette Blount. Backup's going to be Johnson, with the third down back being Theo Riddick. I've said this to you before, a long time ago. I always thought Theo Riddick was the best running back on that team, even when they had Amir Abdullah. I think he's not a between the tackles runner, but, what he does, I think he pass blocks pretty well. I think he's really good at picking up a blitz. And plus he's got good hands. I think he's probably one of the better third down backs in the league. So I would go with those top three. I could see, honestly, Amir Abdullah being cut. I realize he's still on his rookie contract and it doesn't cost the team a whole lot of money. But what he's produced since he's been here, I don't know if that really, guarantees him a spot on the roster. I know I always hear fans chiming for Zenner. But, if Zenner was that good, he'd be farther up the depth chart. Everybody's like, oh, gosh, he ran, 80 yards in the first half, and then they didn't give him the ball in the second half. Yeah, okay, maybe defenses made adjustments on it. Or maybe the Lions were playing from behind again. They couldn't just give him the ball like they wanted to. But, if Zach Zenner was that good, he would have been number one on the depth chart. For as much as we all try to be like armchair coaches and GMs, those guys see those guys in practice every day. So, Zenner would probably be your fourth running back. Green, he showed a little bit last year, especially in his first game against Baltimore. I think he gets to hang around. I think really the odd men are probably Amir Abdullah in Washington.
Okay, the way I see it, almost like don't overthink it. Just go Blount, Carry-On, Abdullah, Theo, and then between Tion, Zenner, and Washington, probably just whoever is best at both special teams at that point. And for that fifth spot, I'd keep five, and just go with those guys. I don't know what cutting Amir Abdullah does to help you unless your roster's all screwed up and you have to have.
I could see him traded sometime. Either early in training camp, something like that. You're right. Like I said, he's still on his rookie contract. But if you're looking to get the best guys on the field, the guy hasn't played any special teams. So
but it's a nice piece to have, just to sit there as now a fourth or basically a fourth running back and receiving back rather than the guy. I still think he's got some juice, especially if he's down the depth chart quite a bit. But with that being said, you seem pretty positive on Carry-On. You think that he's going to in 2019, you think he'll basically just be the guy with some backups? That's what it sounded like to me when you talked about it.
Yeah, I think this year is like his grooming year, and next year he's the workhorse for the team. I don't know. I haven't seen him. I haven't heard a whole lot about his hands. I've heard that's one of those things that you can't work on just by watching other running backs talk about that. It's just like you can work on that. It doesn't seem like he had a fumble problem at Auburn. Unlike Amir Abdullah at Nebraska and in the pros. But I don't know if he's like that guy that can be a all three down back guy. But he might be one of those guys every once in a while, catches a pass out on the flat or, run the wheel route, catches 10, 15 yards on the field. but that's going to be more of like, I think, Theo Riddick's job. So, but yeah, I believe next year he'll be the workhorse. I mean, he'll definitely be, the first down, second down back, with, once again, they'll maybe if they keep Theo around or if they try to get, another, scat back, third down back. But I think Johnson will be the workhorse come next year.
Nice. Well, sounds good. Like I say, I don't know if I'd love to trade up. I pretty much like the player, but, he's got a different running style, and I hope it clicks. And it's always just fun to watch us, as much as I talk about the trenches and the meat and potatoes, it is fun to watch skilled players. So it'd be interesting and fun when he gets those first few carries, or as long as he can pound in the end zone too. That's really all I care about. I don't care about him getting all these gaudy yardage numbers. Just score touchdowns, when we need him to. Him and McGarrett, that would be a huge thing for us. So sounds good. I think it's a overall a good pick. And this whole new, we're going to be tough, we're going to run the football is pretty awesome to have. So moving on, if we're going in sequential order to the third round pick, Mr. Skywalker, Tracy Walker, like, what are you thinking? Do you even know much about him? Like, it really caught everybody off guard. I've done a little bit of re-up on him, but what were your initial thoughts?
To be perfectly honest with you, my initial thought, who's he? Never heard of him.
Right.
I know he played at a smaller school. Once again, obviously the GM and the coach know something I don't know. From what I've read up on afterward about him, he's going to be the guy that's going to be the quarterback in the defensive backfield. And, he's probably going to take over for Quinn when, Quinn's gone. So, once again, this is going to be a learning year for him, but I don't know I don't know if he's going to touch the field very much based on what the Lions have signed and what they have back there right now.
My problem right off the bat, though, is like you just said, he's going to be the quarterback of the defense. Like when? Like in 3 years? There's no real spot. We have all this depth. Like even if he's a tremendous player, which I can't imagine he's all world, because like you said, nobody had heard of him. He wasn't on my radar. We do trust Bob Quinn, but how's he going to be this incredible, just take over guy?
I don't know. That's what I've read about him. Like I said, when they said his name, I'm like, who's that guy? I've never even heard of him before. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to be one of those guys like, oh yeah, I watched his tape. Man, like I said, I never saw the guy play on a Tuesday night on ESPN, to be honest with you, so I couldn't tell you anything about him. But reading the headlines, this guy's going to be the quarterback of the defense, making the calls. So. He can come up and stop the run. He comes up and he's a hitter. Well, yeah, Lou Delmas was a hitter. Killebrew was supposed to be drafted he was a hitter also. And I still kind of like Killebrew. So I don't know. Diggs. That guy comes up and hits. So I'm not, like you said, I don't know when this guy's going to touch the field. How much development is this guy going to need? Is this guy going to be like a Tabor where he's kind of redshirted? Okay, you'll see the field in spots, but, you're still stuck behind, these veterans and, I don't know. But I wish I did. But
I'm fine with it.
When that pick was made, I was like, who's that guy?
I'm fine with it if they love the player and they got a role for him. Going back to my take about, the salaries in the NFL, you can do that, but to me, a third rounder is still like almost in nowadays NFL is a dead starter. Like, is either a groom him or have a role for him, or just he basically will start from day one, especially if you take him at a defensive position. You don't take like project guys or, hey, we're planning for when Glover leaves. Last time I looked, he just signed like a new 2-3 year deal, so it's not like his contract's up after this year. So I don't buy a lot of that stuff they talk about, except the fact that Bob Quinn seems to love him. Matt Patricia and him were fist pumping like they just won the Super Bowl after they took this guy. So they must have something in mind. But if it takes a while for him to develop, I'm going to chalk this up as a miss in the pretty much the mid third round, not even the lower third or the upper third, like mid to late third round. You're taking this guy, and I just don't see a spot where he's going to make an impact. But like you say, from what I read too, there's all this good stuff talking about him. So I guess we got to hope. But
I guess, like I said, we'll wait to see what he looks like when we're down there at practice and when we when we see him in the preseason and in games. Maybe this guy's just going to be special teams guy the first year or two, and that when Quinn, they decide to part ways with Quinn, he becomes your man. I mean, I don't know, but
the one thing I do love is look at our DB and our back seven basically. Look at the depth. I mean, I know we talked about you don't love some of the guys, but I mean just the fact that all the guys we have had that have been halfway decent are still there and don't have to be the guy as much anymore. Let's say Tracy Walker comes in and he's in a safety rotation, or they start playing more 3 safeties and he's the guy. Our corners, let's say one guy goes down, I feel like we have a backup or 2 now that have been around, been in the system and can play. We never have had that the last few years. Same I was saying about the O-line. I think that's going to be a new, different thing on the team, is to see this defensive back/back seven depth and quality of player that's going to be better than we've had in probably the last 5 years, which would be nice because you got to be able to cover in the NFL. And so there's another plus for good old Walker boy is, hey, man, if you can cover and you can run and hit, I don't mind you on my team.
Yeah. Like I said, I haven't seen this guy play 1 minute. All I saw of him was a few highlights they flashed on him on draft night, so I can't tell you anything about the guy.
Yeah. So moving into the 4th round, which they shouldn't have had a pick, I'm kind of just looking at my computer, getting ready for the 5th round. All of a sudden, boom, they're up there. They made another trade. They gave up a future 3rd rounder, which initial thoughts are just, oh my gosh, I hate it. What are they doing? Don't even have anybody targeted. They go up to get Deshaun Hand out of Alabama. What's your thoughts?
This guy, to me, I mean, I remember when he was recruited in college, he was the number 1 player coming out. It was down between Alabama and Michigan, and he ultimately went to Alabama. And still, I think his career was kind of unremarkable at Alabama. I mean, Alabama was on TV an awful lot, and I watch a lot of college football. And still, I mean, he wasn't that standout defensive guy that you hear him talking about. I mean, I remember they talked about A'Shawn Robinson a lot more than Deshaun Hand. So I'm not quite for sure what happened to him there. I mean, maybe he was just another cog in that, power wheel of Alabama, just, pumping out pro players. But it didn't seem like, he got a whole lot of pub for being the high level guy. I mean, maybe, we don't live in the South, and I don't always read SEC material, more focused on Midwest Big Ten stuff. But gosh, it seemed like, Gary out of Michigan gets a lot more pub than Deshaun Hand ever got out of Alabama. So, am I happy with the pick? I mean, yes, if they could develop him into, supposed to be an elite defensive end. But like I said, he just never seemed to live up to the hype down at Alabama. So I don't know if this is that project guy that we kind of talk about, I'm not for sure. Am I happy with the pick? I'm cautiously optimistic about it. I mean, but he played big time football at a big time school and in a good conference. So, am I happy with the pick? Yeah, I could live with it. Giving up a 3rd rounder for him, even though it's next year's draft. Like you said, that might have been, too steep a price to go get that guy.
Yeah. Yeah, cool, man. I guess one thing we got to watch out for in that is, so we just talked about Tracy Walker, who we'd never heard of, and he's not on anybody's radar. And then this guy pops up, and you're like, oh, I know that name. Oh, I know he's from Alabama. They're a big school, so we kind of give him the benefit of the doubt for those reasons, but it's going to come down to, can you play? What are your skills at the National Football League level? And I look at this guy, and I think all the talk we did early in this podcast about not getting an edge rusher, not getting guys that can pressure the quarterback, when you look at this guy's size and versatility, I didn't know where to put him on my Lions depth chart. Is end? Is he a tackle? And I just thought, man, I've almost put him in the middle on that front line, saying he can play all these different spots, and that's what we have to understand too, is they're evolving this defense. So instead of us going, hey, what would Jim Schwartz have wanted, or what would good old Jimmy Caldwell and Terrell Austin have had on their defense, you got to think about this whole new defensive scheme and type they're building. So I felt like he fit in those roles when I really thought and studied him up a little bit. And the other thing I looked at is, so we had I think it was 9 picks next year in next year's draft. I can't remember if it was 2 3rd rounders or what, but so they gave up that asset, and then some people mentioned if Ziggy walks, you would get a 3rd back, compensatory. But I'm still in the camp of like hoping both that Ziggy blows up this year and that we just keep him just because he's such a freak size and athleticism. But I think this Deshaun Hand is going to be a good player in this new scheme. And the more I thought about it, as much as I do hate giving up future resources, like if it helps the team right now and gets us a playoff win, like I guess, life's short. I'm going to take it. I know you do have to look in the long term, but I want to start winning now, and if we had to bump it up a year to do so, I feel better about that now than I did right after draft day, the last episode we did. So, that's my take on it. He's totally not agree. Crazy explosive, but I think he'll be a good meat and potatoes defensive player for us.
Yeah, I mean, hard worker, maybe like you said, he knows A'Shawn Robinson, maybe Robinson, maybe takes him under his wing a little bit. So yeah, I mean, I like the pick. Was I like stoked? Like, oh yeah, we got a steal here. No, but I'm happy with that pick.
Yeah, he was on my radar for the Lions, and this guy looks like a pro when he comes off the bus. Not only size and height, weight, speed type of thing. Well, not speed as much, but height, weight. But when I saw interviews with him, I just felt like, man, this guy looks like an NFL player, like a professional NFL player when I saw him. So, we'll see. The other thing, not to get on a tangent about it, never know how much this is, but the Alabama D-line coach is here in Detroit now. So now he's got A'Shawn and this guy. So if anybody knows him, I think it's Bo Davis or something is the guy's name. So he's coached both these guys, and I'm sure that helped him feel good about the player, that he's going to come in, know how to use them, and be able to vouch for him a little bit. If this guy's a knucklehead or is not a good an athlete and can't do what they want him to do, I'm sure they would have told him that and they wouldn't be here. So that's another positive to look at. So, hopefully we can help this defense because they're going to need it the way they're going. Now, before we go to round 5, I know it's a popular name, but this Jonathan Hankins, who's been out there in free agency, is a big old DT. I think we talked about him before. I sure wouldn't mind taking some of our money that's left and going and getting a guy like that, put him in the middle with Sly and A'Shawn. What do you think?
I would like that as well, and I think the Lions are going to make a move here pretty soon, considering they just traded Akeem Spence away, for a 2019 draft pick to the Dolphins. So I can see him signing another defensive lineman, but I'd like Hankins, but I think it's going to be more of that Ricky Jean-Francois because he played in New England, and I think Patricia knows him. I think it might lean towards a little more that way, but I personally think I'd rather have Jonathan Hankins. I think he's a little better run stuffer, so that's the way I'd want to lean. But with the move of Spence today, I could see that another D lineman being picked up here in free agency.
Yeah, which like you said, I'm good with either of those guys. I just think now you're going to get Hankins at that good price because he's been out there for a while, and I believe he's much younger, a little bit bigger, but it looks like we're going to more of that bigger DT, not that svelte 300-pound guy. We want the 320-ish guy that can hold his block and move some people. So I feel like Hankins is a better upside play if that's the kind you're going for. But yeah, I hope they make it. And here's one thing I want to talk about quickly, this Spence trade, because they got a 7th rounder and everybody's like, oh, 7th rounder, you're just throwing darts. Like, I'm so frustrated at the NFL draft in the 7th round because I'm looking at my board and I know I'm only compiling it on what I get from the quote unquote experts, but there's so many studs out there, so many top players I see, and people are taking punters, we're taking fullbacks, like they just seem like throwaway picks, and I'm looking at my board going, man, there's people here that can help you. There's like players that play at big schools that have height, weight, speed, that are productive, and they're just not getting drafted at all. Like, I don't get it. What's your take on a 7th rounder? Is it a waste, a throwaway, or can you get a stud there if you really put your mind to it?
Yeah, the 7th rounders you're down to your diamonds in the rough. And like you said, you see all these names, and like you said, we fall into that trap of like, well, this guy played at Alabama, this guy played at Texas, this guy played at Ohio State. But there's obviously something why other teams aren't jumping on them, because that's one thing that you hear a lot out of GMs, like, well, if they play at bigger schools, they played against the best competition, they should be a little more ready, pro-ready, where they don't have to take as nearly as much seasoning as that guy who went to a D2 school or, a smaller school. But there's obviously got to be something with them. Maybe it's the defensive backs. Maybe they come out of the crouch too quick, or they don't turn their hips really well. Linebackers, they don't have, the quick feet. They can't get off blocks, something like that. D linemen, maybe they play too high. They get pushed back pretty easy. Something like that. Now late round like offensive linemen, those are ones. I know we've talked about this a whole bunch. I'm a firm believer that offensive linemen, it is no matter any spot on the line, except tight end. It's one of the hardest jobs to learn in the pros. It's a stance you don't walk around in a 3-point stance. It's something you don't do every day, in a normal day. It's get down to your 3-point stance and come explode off the ball. You don't do that. So learning to get your hands up, something like that. So late round picks that you get like those offensive linemen, I like them. Do they develop? Yeah. Do you miss on some? Yeah. But that's like getting a 7th round pick for it, finding that diamond in the rough. That's so I'm always happy with that. But I don't find them as throwaway picks, but it's where you get your long shots. Is one thing. It's just like, this kid looks good. He produced in a couple games, but this DB, he comes out of his break too quick, or he loses track of his man. He's always peeking in the offensive backfield. That's where he gets burned. That's stuff you can kind of coach through. But those late round picks, I always kind of like to go for like those bigger guys. The later round, they tend to be a little more hungry. You can find a little more in them. Are they as good as your first round picks? No, that's why they're still sitting there in the 7th round. But those offensive linemen, those big defensive linemen, that like I said, maybe they play a little higher. They takes them a little longer to get off a block. You get them in coaching, they can develop. So I don't find those generally as wasted picks.
Okay, yeah, I got you, and I know we got to move on here to the last couple picks, but my last little bit on it is that, so we trade last year's starting defensive tackle for a 7th rounder. I'm trying to figure out how to value that, because if you're just going to use your 7th rounder as, it's a flyer, you'd be lucky to make the roster, or we'll just look at our roster and figure out what we're missing and take that in the 7th round, versus let's take basically the highest graded player in the 7th round that played and had production and is quality, and if he busts out, who cares? But I could probably write down 20 names in the 7th round that I wouldn't have minded. And, when a lot of these teams are taking just garbage players you never heard of, or people that are just so off the radar, and I don't get it. I bet if you did a study of these bigger name guys that get taken later versus these no names, look at our roster now. We got Diggs, and I think we took Theo in the 5th or 6th round. These aren't throwaways if you use them right. You find the right players. Andre Diggs and Theo are good players that got taken late. And even we got a couple 7th rounders undrafted the last couple of years that have been good. So you can't just think of these as, we only got a 7th for them. If you use a 7th well, it's very valuable. So I was encouraged by them getting another pick in next year's draft, especially if they weren't going to have a spot for Spence really on this defense. But you got to nail it.
Right. That goes back to, like you just said, that goes back to what we were talking about earlier. The defense, the scheme is changing. Maybe there's just not a spot for him. It's just like, hey, we'll take whatever we can get. 7th rounder. You're right. We find that guy who's hungry and who really works hard to get a spot. And I'm not saying everybody at practice isn't working their tail off, but like you said, you just got to hit on it. And I know the 7th round guys are can be hard to hit on, but hey, we've seen plenty of 1st rounders in this too. Eric Ebron.
Like me and Big Hughes we're doing a dynasty thing now, where each year we're taking players with every Lions pick and building off of it. And I'm pulling it up right now. I think my 6th round pick this year was Devin Bellamy out of Georgia, kind of a rush edge linebacker, defensive end type guy. And then the 7th round, I think I took this Holton Hill guy, who's a he was like a top corner. People had him in the third, fourth round. Couldn't understand why he wasn't getting drafted. You know, that's my 7th round flyer rather than, like, I don't mind the Lions taking a fullback because I get it. It's more of like a mindset and, hey, we don't have one. There's no real good fullbacks out there in the NFL, so you got to go draft one if you want one. I get it. But would I much rather have maybe this Holton Hill type who might become a really good corner in the 7th round rather than just, you know, some other position? I think so. So that's kind of where I'm seeing it too, is each year I'm getting these like pretty good studs in the 7th round, and other teams seem like they're just burning them or act like, oh, you know, they're worth nothing. So anyway, we've hit on that enough, but hopefully they can make that count. Either use that as a trade-up piece next year, or get me a decent player, like you said, even these old linemen. Get me a developmental old lineman or a guy that can replace Ricky Wagner. You know, I don't know. Give me something with that 7th rounder so I can feel good about it, rather than somebody that's so off the radar next year.
Yeah, don't draft a long snapper.
Yes, exactly. I mean, it's those kind of picks I just shake my head at when I look at the board. But finishing up our draft talk here, just kind of talk me through rounds 5 and 7, who they got, what you thought, and what else maybe you were considering or thought in those spots, if you had any names.
Yeah, and I know in the past we've spoken late round picks. Like I just kind of mentioned it. I really like you know grabbing those offensive linemen that you're looking to develop, or like those skill positions. You know, a wide receiver, you know, cornerback, you know,
yep.
safety, something like that. So when they took, you know, what's his name? Out of
Crosby.
Crosby, yeah, sorry, I was slipping slip of the tongue, you know, I was missing it. I was really happy with that pick. You know, watching college football late on Saturday nights, you know, I saw the guy play. I mean, but the only thing I worry about is the offense they ran out there. They do a lot more kind of like, they don't really come firing off the ball, you know, with that offense that they ran out at Oregon. It was more of, you know, kind of getting away, let the running back, you know, find the hole at that point. But I think he can develop into maybe, you know, right tackle down the road. So I was pretty happy with that pick right there. On the 7th round, once again, fullback. I almost find fullbacks like wasted picks. To be honest with you, they're not really used that much anymore in the pros at all. I mean, this isn't, you know, the 1980s, you know, where you have 2 backs in the backfield. I mean, how many times did, you know, the Lions, you know, really line up with a fullback? I mean, it's like, oh, yeah, well, we didn't have it in the offense. I mean, still, for the number of times we need to open up holes near the goal line, you know, because did we not score because we didn't have a fullback? No, that's because you can get an undrafted free agent at fullback. I'd much rather take a flyer on a cornerback, you know, a wide receiver, you know, something like that, as opposed to, you know, drafting a fullback.
Real quick on that, though, like, so the last couple of years, like, the NFL has been saying, oh, we know we're, like you just said, we're moving away from the fullback. You know, we want this H-back, fullback, tight end. Hey, if we really need a big blocker, we'll just throw our defensive tackle out there and see if he can get the job done. Like, I'm starting to think, like, some of these trends that you see that, you know, everyone thinks is a good idea trying to do, it might be good for some teams, but I know when I've been watching Lions football the last few years, like, we're lining up with that stupid pistol formation where the quarterback is 6 yards off the line of scrimmage and the running back's another 2-3 yards behind him, and we just do that stupid pistol handoff, and the defensive tackles are in the backfield before our guy even gets the football, and we lose 4 yards. Like, I don't know that that's going to happen if you go under center, smash mouth fullback, and, you know, power to the right. Like, to me, that's what would excite me about that pick, because, you know, we've already seen that a lot of our current running backs can't get it done just by themselves, but maybe if they had a lead blocker that can take out that unblocked linebacker or that defensive tackle that just used to blow by our offensive line, probably won't now because we shirted up with the Hall of Famer Frank Ragnow. You know, maybe that'll help out our run game. So I'm optimistic again on it, but I'm debating on is it the new NFL where it doesn't work, or does it just not work for some teams? And would it be maybe nice for us to have that lead pounder that would come in and just want to hit somebody so our running back had a little more room?
Right, but I still think you can get undrafted free agent fullbacks. I mean, I don't see a lot of teams, drafting fullbacks. We need one of those. We're gonna, you can get an undrafted free agent to do that. I mean, you're not gonna scheme a whole lot of plays for this guy. If it is, it's like a quick slam, play into the line, trying to pick up that yard, something like that. You're not like, hey, we're gonna, run you out, we're gonna split you out, something like that. You're a matchup nightmare. No, I mean,
but you don't see him out there on a good percentage of plays being a lead blocker.
Yeah, not particularly. I still think what we have at wide receiver, that's what they're going to do. They're still going to run 3 wide, that way. So, yeah.
Okay, I agree with you on maybe getting it undrafted. So, overall, would you say, your philosophy is, let's say you think you can get him as an undrafted free agent, you miss out on him, then there's nobody there you like, and you really want to add that to your offense. You would have taken the risk of just hoping to get him as a free agent rather than just draft him and know that you get him. Is that your stance on not only him, but that was kind of my beef with some of these other picks, is that I felt like they targeted certain guys and just went and got them regardless. I'm much more of wait it out until you can get the best value, and if you miss on them, there's probably 5 other guys that are going to be, nearly as good or comparable, so just do the best you can and get the best value. Where do you sit on that?
Right. At that point, late round, maybe it is, you're just trying to go for, best player available. And if their board was like that, we're like, hey, this fullback is better than all these other guys out there, I guess I just kind of find that hard to believe. But once again, we're not the ones sitting in there. We're not the ones, we're not the scouts. So we can't tell you exactly if that's happening or not. But it's one of those things you're trying to tell me this fullback is better than, this cornerback or this linebacker or something like that. I don't know. So I just always think fullback's one of those picks you can just, they're not used that often anymore. A lot of offenses have removed them completely. Some are sitting out there. Some colleges have them, but, Michigan has them. But you can go sign one as an undrafted free agent. And like I said, go pick up one of those skill positions that can develop or something that, that might be one of those diamonds in the rough that you hit on. So it's kind of the way I look at it.
Yeah, real quick, one thing you said about was he the best player on their board? If so, I guess, whatever. Here's my beef with that when they always say he's the top guy on our board. To me, I'd love to see a real NFL board, because what I think they do is they take off almost everybody that doesn't fit their scheme. They take off everybody that, they don't like character-wise or medical. They target, their top positions of need, and then they just load up those positions and then grade them accordingly, because I guarantee this fullback's not the top player on your quote-unquote board, but I bet you he's your most valued player at that part in the draft, because you look at your current roster, you don't have one, and you talked about it before and said, what we really need, or they think they need, is a iron-head fullback that goes in and wants to just crush people. And so that's why they take a guy like that, not because, wow, we had him 30 spots higher in our board. He's just the position of need that you wanted to take at that spot, is more my opinion on how they do it, because you're not putting 400 players on your board. You're putting 100 or less. So they're very targeted people. So that's my take on when they always say best available. It's just best available at position of need, at time of the draft, and at a guy they liked in the pre-draft process, not best overall.
Yeah.
So, well, sounds good, man. I'm just looking at, we'll put a button on this whole draft talk. I'm looking at, so my picks, if I was the Lions GM, might as well get this on the old podcast, making my live picks for all the Lions draft picks pretty much either before they announced or right as they announced. I would have had Harold Landry, defensive end, outside linebacker, Darius Geis, running back in the second round, Harrison Phillips, defensive tackle in the third, Okoronkwo, defensive end, outside linebacker, Oklahoma in the 4th with that trade up. I think it's Elliott, the safety out of Texas, strong free safety. And then I would take in Holton Hill, the cornerback I talked about earlier, with my 7th round pick. So, and that's based on like the current Lions team, like what they're looking for, maybe what would help them, what was good value at the time. So, like you said, you can see it's totally different than what they did, but you know, I think some pretty dang good values there, not knowing the character in medical. So, I'm curious to see how it all shakes out.
Yeah, I mean, overall, I'd give this draft probably like a B-, C+. You know, based on what we have talked about, you know, what guys were taken, you know, what was taken, you know. But once again, I'm not the one, you know, doing the scouting, you know, watching the hours upon hours of game film of all these guys. So,
yep.
You know, if that's what they like. But yeah, I do like some of the guys they got, especially where they got them. So, yeah, I'll give the draft grade. My grade would be like a B-, C+.
All right. And we don't have to go over the fact that we know it's not fair to grade it. We want to wait and see. But I'm right there with you. I kind of put that same kind of, if I had to put a number or grade on it now, that's where I'd be. But I think this draft was all about changing the culture, changing the way that we play football. And I think I want to talk to you come week 4 or 5, Grifka, and hear your thoughts on this new toughness, this new running game, this new protection, and this new defense, because I think you're going to be a big fan. I know we can nitpick it and double think it all the time, but I think we're going to come back and say, man, this looks a lot different than the last 5-10 years of Lions football, and that's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah. Like I said, looking forward to it. Looking forward to see what this mindset of this coach is going to be, and you know, with this regime. So I'm pretty stoked, actually, to see, you know, seeing how everybody else thinks that the Packers are going to be studs again, and Minnesota, you know, they're world beaters again, and Chicago is improving, and, you know, they have one of the toughest schedules. I mean, I still think the Lions are going to be pretty tough this year, so, you know, it's not like they fell off the face of the earth, so I'm pretty interested to see what this team is going to do.
All right. Well, sounds good, man. I loved all your takes on the draft. Fun to go back and discuss it. We'll table Frank Ragnow for another day. I'm sure we'll be able to have that talk again, and always fun hearing your thoughts. So thanks, Griff. Appreciate it.